Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait till it's 9 and then we'll start. We have had a bit of Teams teasing from the very get-go of the morning, so that's why we are here a bit later than expected, but we are here on time. That's the most important. And you probably know very well about Teams teasing. We also had the chance to share about our morning moments, as Åsa put it, and it's everything from like sitting with the cat to having the morning coffee to meditation and yoga, and looking at the sun as well. I don't know about you, but I hope you're ready for this webinar. We are now. Okay, so we'll just wait another moment and then we'll let the rest in. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's webinar, IKEA's Transformative Journey. I think it would be a great start on this webinar just to land in this room. You might have a hectic morning and we had the Teams trouble, so I would like to invite you to close your eyes now and let's just have a deep breath together. Maybe you can feel the chair below you. Take another deep breath. It's nice to be able to land in the room. And we are sharing in the chat now a question for you to inquire on today during the webinar, but also throughout the day. And it's straight on this topic for today. And today's topic is the Inner Development Goals Framework, also known as the IDGs, like the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we will hear from IKEA as a best practice case on how to integrate the framework into our organizations. The IDG framework is a global, scientifically based learning and development framework that can help us transform ourselves, build our organizational capabilities, and ultimately deliver better results and more impact as organizations. The best part for us as HR leaders and professionals, though, is that the IDG, like Noka, where I'm from, see HR as playing a key role in future-proofing our organizations and societies in this rapidly changing world. And the IDG framework can also be a leverage to step into this key role. So IDG might even be your best friend by the end of this webinar today. Today we'll also learn how IKEA has integrated the IDG framework in their global leadership programs. The webinar format today is made in the spirit of the IDGs. This means that we have given you even more time to share what's on your mind than usual and time to integrate these learnings. We all have busy schedules, so we hope that we can all make this webinar worthwhile by sharing and caring with and for each other. We also hope that you'll stay the whole time, of course, if possible. We'll promise you a little gift in the end. So my name is Andreas Ehrentoft, and I'm Senior Network Advisor at Noka. My good colleagues, Laura and Cecilia, are assisting me today with the technical side of things. So before we begin, let's go over a few practicalities for today's webinar. Today's webinar will be recorded and made accessible for NOCA members afterwards. We would like to invite you to leave your camera on though, because we are humans and we like to see your faces. It's of course up to you. However, we will make sure that it won't be in the video. You will also receive the slides afterwards. Feel free to use emojis if you like something. It makes it more fun for all of us, especially for the speakers. So try it out now. You can find them in the top bar. It seems to be working. Thank you. Perfect. Today we'll have a short open mic session by the end of the webinar, so be ready to share what's on your mind. As always, we'll use Slido for your questions, so please open a new browser now or take out your phone and go to slido.com, enter the code NOCA 2024 or scan the QR code here. To get us started today, we have a question for you, and Laura will share it now. We are curious on if you know the IDGs. Let's see. 20 people have answered so far. We are waiting for more to answer. So far, most haven't or don't know the IDGs. It's interesting to know where we are at. And after today, it will be different. That's why we are here today, right? So actually, so far, most people don't know. No, it's more or less equal, but most don't know the IDGs. So that's perfect. That's why we're here. We have another question for you. To what extent is HR contributing to sustainable development in your organization? And I think we'll have it shared now. Yes, perfect. So how are you and your colleagues contributing to sustainability and sustainable development? Okay. More than 3 for sure. That's for most. That's great to see. And it's varying, as you can see. Jan, do you have any reflections on what we see here?
I mean, we have a little bit of a normal distribution, like in most cases, but my thesis is that HR will save the world. I think it's us working with human development who can affect most of the biggest issues in the world. And I'm really happy with the 20% where this is already happening, and I think we can learn from them. And I'm also really, really curious how we move at least one step ahead in seeing how HR and human development especially can have a large impact, not only on the organization, but also have some global ripple effects.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the reflection, but also for sharing in Slido. And we'll keep using Slido for the whole session. So feel free to put in questions and like the ones you want to get answered, so we can get all the collective intelligence in the room. Okay, now let me introduce our first speaker of today, Jan Artem Henriksson, who I am personally glad to introduce to you. Jan just recently returned from the Virgin Islands, where he did leadership development training for Richard Branson and AI industry leaders. Not many people can say that. So as you can imagine, Jan is a sought-after expert in leadership development. He's one of the founders of Self Leaders, a Nordic leadership consultancy who has trained more than 85,000 people with proven results. He's also a senior faculty member of Stockholm's School of Economics executive education. He has been working with top management in academic institutions, governments, and global organizations, even in IKEA, as we have today, and the White House. Today, Jan is here in his role as the executive director of the Inner Development Goals Initiative, where he will introduce you to the IDG framework and highlight HR's key role in business and society, as he has just mentioned. So without further ado, welcome, Jan. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you, Andreas, for that kind introduction. With that introduction, I can only disappoint you now. So I'll do my best to navigate the world of inner development together with you and Åsa. So I'm actually originally born in Ukraine, and some of the conflicts we see today between Ukraine and Russia, I felt throughout my upbringing in my family. And from a very early age, I had this sense that there must be different ways in which grown-ups can handle differences, complex challenges, and so on. So I've dedicated my life to really working with it. And I've seen the difference that can be made once grown-ups go through transformational processes working on their skills, and how teams can show up differently, and also how we can tackle really difficult problems in a different way. So this is really close to my heart. I had to grow myself just to keep the love to the people I have in my family who are both in Ukraine and in Russia. And growing up in Sweden with a very different norm on masculinity and, of course, what it means to be a man, I think there are some very potent issues that we're facing globally now, and of course in our organizations. So I'm here to talk for the IDGs. That is a non-for-profit organization. We work a lot with scientists. I'm going to give you some background on the inner development goals, since many are new to it. I'm going to talk about the framework, but most of the time we're going to talk about how can we apply it? How can this help us be better and get better leaders in the organizations that we work with? So, are my slides showing up as they should? Do you see a full screen?
Yes.
With the IDG framework? So to start us off,
Okay.
A very important distinction to understand is the difference between technical and adaptive challenges. Ron Heifetz made this years ago, and still this is one of the most common mistakes that we do when we work with in our organizations in facing the challenges we face. I mean, if you by accident spill coffee on your computer, you have a problem. But it's a very technical problem, and a person with expertise, for sure not myself, but somebody else, would be able to come in and fix it. If you need to do a heart surgery, or even if you need to build an airplane like Richard Branson did to go to space, it's a difficult but technical problem, and we can go through a process that together with experts that is somewhat defined, and we can sort it out without changing who we are or how we interact with each other. On the other hand, many of the problems that I think you are sitting with, because this is a group of very intelligent, ambitious people, are not of the technical sort. They are adaptive. They actually require us, our top management, our employees, to change in some ways. And it's actually bigger than just within our organization. I mean, of course, to develop a drug that helps people with heart issues is a technical and difficult challenge. But to get people to exercise or to stay more healthy, it's an adaptive challenge. And it's not only in your organization, it's also about the norms and challenges outside of it. And of course, the SDGs that you all are aware of are very much of the adaptive character. This is what more and more leaders are also starting to understand, including organizations like NOAA, working with weather prediction in the United States, understanding that climate change is mostly an adaptive, it's a leadership challenge, it's not just technical, and it requires us to develop skills. So some years ago, we had a vision together with the creators of this framework, Jacob Trollbeck and team, who simplified all these complex adaptive challenges into this framework that many of us know and love. It gives me hope that we globally actually could agree on these global goals. And we said, but wait, if these challenges are adaptive, why are all the researchers using different frameworks, different language? Can't we create something that is similar to the SDGs, but for the inner, so we can have one language of how we can work on these fluffy adaptive challenges, no matter if it's the SDGs or other complex challenges, like tackling some of the risks of AI, which was we're focusing on Necker Island now. So we brought together some scientists. We've been doing that for years on our little island here in Stockholm Archipelago, the Oak Island. So we don't have much resources, but we do have a sauna in an island. And this attracts the researchers like, you know, bees around honey. We say you will never experience such a lovely place with so much brains as in the sauna on the Oak Island. So we got Amy Edmondson from who've been working with psychological safety, Peter Senge, many others. And actually in the first round, we had around 1,000 people that we in different sorts convened. We had a survey and we brought in some organizations like Stockholm Resilience Center, the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard, where I've done a lot of work, also IMD, of course, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And we created a foundation, the Inner Development Goals Foundation, that is, of course, based on the IDG framework, where we have asked thousands of experts, what inner skills do we need to develop individually and collectively to increase our chances of solving complex problems, like the Sustainable Development Goals. We had 2 independent researchers coding all the answers coming in because, of course, all the researchers, they're very many times siloed. They're experts in their field. And we found 5 dimensions and 23 skills that are more or less universal. We've been testing this out on all continents. We've done feasibility studies. There are some adjustments, smaller adjustments that are coming as this becomes more and more global. But we are today working with many global organizations. We work especially through organizations because all of us who've tried to change within our family systems, we know how difficult that can be. And at work, we actually have the chance to reinvent ourselves constantly. So we think the workplace is the best arena for human development. We think we need to work with the adults we have. And we also think there is huge power in working with government institutions who can actually help and accelerate, making it easier to actually do trainings at large in our corporations. So we're a think tank, you could say, a good lobbyist, lobbying for the good stuff, like long-term orientation, compassion, complexity awareness, and we are an accelerator of learning through the IDG framework. So I'm going to show you the framework now. I'm going to say a few words on each of the dimensions, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more on how we work in our network, and Åsa is going to come in and tell you more about a specific case. So do a thumbs up if that sounds like a meaningful way to spend our minutes together. All right, here we go. The framework, the 5 dimensions and the 23 skills that the scientists found and that has been used all around the world. First of all, there are skills in the being dimension. And being is many times associated with sitting cross-legged and meditating. And you don't have to do that. Some people like or even love meditation, and that's great. Many people don't, and that should be okay also. There is so many things we can do to strengthen the way we are and show up as leaders. And I'm just going to mention one thing for each dimension. And here there is a whole field called ACT, Acceptance Commitment Training, which all new psychologists learn and practice in their trainings with groups and individuals. And it's basically helping leaders to identify their personal values and live by them. And understand that living by your personal values will involve pain. It will involve something that psychologists call clean pain. It's the kind of pain when you're standing up for something you believe in. It will have consequences. You will need to experience fear, frustration, and many other emotions, but you will not experience as much of the dirty pain of the guilt and shame for letting yourself down, for not being true to yourself. So basically, it's the Buddhist realization that we cannot avoid pain, but we can avoid suffering. So understanding your personal values, living by them more, in the extent that we can, meeting the clean pain that it takes to live by our values is something that is very human. And it's something that is largely ignored in our corporate world. Many times when we work with corporate values, we don't even dare to ask our people, what are your personal values? We're just pushing it down our organizational values, top down. And here there is always this knowing doing gap in the corporate world, where people at Harvard, at Stockholm School of Economics, Karolinska Institute, they have knowledge that usually takes 20 to 30 years before it comes out and becomes common practice. And honestly, with some of the global challenges, with AI coming, we can't wait 20 to 30 years before that knowledge comes out. We need to train our leaders, also including helping them to stay authentic to their personal values, to show up how they are, to become more self-aware about strengths and weaknesses, and being present in the decisions that they are taking, no matter if they practice mindfulness or not, in the difficult conversations and so on. And these are all skills that can be trained and developed. There is good science, there is good way of doing it, and it doesn't even have to cost so much more. It's just a more effective way of working with your values internally that can be done. And I think should be done so we get more leaders who are ethical and long-term orientated, because reminding people of their personal values gets people to cheat less. No matter what values they have, it's more powerful than getting a religious person to put their hand on the Bible. And we know this from science, and yet this is not used. In the thinking dimension, we are trained to solve problems in our higher education. There are a few higher educations who actually train us at identifying the right problems. I mean, training us in system thinking, in working with cases. How many of you have been working with cases actively? Hands up. A few, but not the majority. There is so much we can learn from what Peter Senge does at MIT in training leaders to become system thinkers, to really stop for a little moment and do an analysis of the different stakeholders, drawing out the system and thinking in a more long-term orientated way. I'm actually going to do a little exercise here that I did together with some top entrepreneurs working with AI, with Richard Branson, if you're willing to do a thought experiment for 2 minutes with me. So the invitation here is just to show how we can nudge people to a different time perspective and long-term orientation. And this is more and more what many progressive companies are doing, and working with scientists who are helping leaders to not only think 1 or 2 years ahead. So this is the thought experiment. If you just are willing to take a breath again. And I invite you to, if you want, you can close your eyes or keep them open, but to think about 2 people. One person I'm inviting you to think about is the oldest person that you love and care for. They don't have to be alive, somebody who's really old and who have had a deep impact on you and who you love and care for. Think about that person, place them by your side in this thought experiment just for 2 minutes. When you have that, I would like you to invite the youngest person that you have in your life, that you really care and love and wish the best for. Who is the youngest person you have in your life right now that you really care for? And now the invitation is to think, how was the world when the oldest person was as young as the youngest one? Which are the challenges that that person had to meet when they were growing up? Which are the skills they had to build? Who did they have to be to survive and flourish? Just feel into it. What comes up when I ask these questions? How was the world? Which challenges did they have to face? Which skills did they have to build? And now I invite you to think about the other person, the youngest person that you care about. How will the world be, do you think, when they are as old as the oldest person you had by your side? Which are the challenges you think they will be meeting? Which skills do you think they need to build? How are they different? And how would you like to contribute for the world to be as flourishing and just and sustainable as possible on that journey? So I invite you to slowly come back. This can bring up emotions for many. And it's okay. I invite you to just be with that. If you want, you can write in the chat how this little thought experiment was for you. This is an exercise from the Ministry of Future Generations in Wales. They have seen that by reminding us of the generations before us and the generations that are to come, we can, in a very powerful way, nudge people towards a much longer time frame and future orientation. I did this short exercise, and excuse me if we didn't take the full time to really honor the emotional depths that is possible here. But I just want you to see that we are open-ended systems. We are affected by a lot of factors around us. And when we take decisions, when we think what has just come before or how things are framed are extremely important for us in how sustainable decisions we will make, how we will treat each other, and how we will show up together. So going from linear thinking to more systems thinking is really, really possible with many different tools and nudges. It's not possible, or it's very hard to get people to get 20 more IQ points because it's kind of stable. But the skills in the thinking dimension, like critical thinking, complexity awareness, perspective skills, we can truly build. We can see this in research, and that can make a huge difference on the quality of decision making that we have in our organizations. The same thing with our relating skills. Emma Stenström, who's one of my favorite researchers in Stockholm in Sweden, she has just come out with a book called Bubble Hopping. How many have heard about it? Hands up. A few. What she has shown is that you can develop empathy, compassion, humility, and connectedness among your staff just by getting them out of their bubble and meeting people in other bubbles. And this can be on any polarized question. And one example of how you could do this tomorrow is just writing on LinkedIn. You can just think about any group that you feel you are not part of and that you think are really, really crazy. This could be the right-wing party in your country or the hardcore left-wing animal rights, vegan activist, or whoever you think, the anti-vaxxers, that totally we should vaccinate everybody, including 5-month-old babies, and just say, you know what, I'm really curious about somebody who holds this opinion, and I would like to take them out to my favorite lunch restaurant. You write this on your LinkedIn, and I promise you, and you write, if you're interested, I really want to understand, I want to ask some questions, please write a personal message to me. The first person who writes, I will take them out for lunch. And then Emma has a short page on how you can be curious and ask open questions. And that lunch is transforming. It's not transforming because you will change your mind on that specific issue. No, not at all. But by truly being curious, empathic, non-judgmental, and say, oh, tell me a story. What makes you think that? Instead of saying, how can you think like that? You know, like what made you draw these conclusions? What experiences do you have that have nudged you in this direction? these types of interactions stretch how we handle differences. It stretches how people handle their teenage daughters or sons, and it stretches how you handle conflict in your team and organization. We become much better with being empathical, with listening, with being humble, not thinking that we know it all. This changes people. And the fun part for those of you who are in HR, it doesn't have to cost anything. You could do it yourself just by the convening power that you're sitting on in HR. And this is why I say HR will save the world, or at least HR have the possibility of saving the world, because there is so much we can do. There is so much good science that is not used, and we can close the knowing doing gap. Of course, in the collaborating section, I think one of many of our heroes is Amy Edmondson, who know of her, who've been writing on psychological safety. She's just written the new book, The Right Kind of Wrong. We will be doing a seminar with her and Otto Scharmer at Harvard just now in October. There are so many ways we can increase collaboration just by what Andreas did, guiding us to a few deep breaths, doing a check-in before we start a meeting, everybody letting their voice be heard. These are things, again, that doesn't cost anything, but that is underutilized in our teams. We can increase our decision-making, we can increase how we relate to each other, and you, of course, start seeing how these different skills and columns are interrelated. And finally, acting, having more courage, more perseverance. This is what we need with the global challenges. This is where it's maybe the most difficult, where it looks like it's so dark today. Because if we only look at the technical side of it, the numbers are not pointing to the right direction. Most countries are moving in the wrong direction with the SDGs. There are a few exceptions like Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is, by the way, the first country who have adopted the IDG framework from the president and top down, and now it's the second president who actually works with this in the whole of public sector. So how can we stay courageous when the future looks so challenging? How can we help our youth, our talent, to find hope? And for me, the IDGs in general is a story of hope, because the story we tell is a narrative that global challenges involve all of us. Not everybody can work with carbon offset or saving the world, but everybody can work with becoming more compassionate, more empathical, or more long-term orientated. And guess what? Science shows just if me and Åsa, if we hang out a lot, and I put on some weight, some serious weight, I start eating ice cream like crazy, and I put on 10 kilos. That's a big risk for Åsa. If she hangs out with me a lot, she might put on some kilos also. We know that. We've seen it from health system research. This is how health and unhealth and even divorces spread in systems. But guess what? The same is true with compassion or presence or empathy. If Åsa becomes much more empathic, better listener, compassionate, she leads in a very transformational way that will influence me. So that story is what can give us hope and agency in this very dark times. And I think one of the challenges for us in HR is getting people into the trainings, getting people to actually do the good stuff that we want them to do. And guess what? Sometimes we need a better story. Sometimes we need a better framing that is not just about we're going to get you to perform better or do better or not get sick, or it's all about you, and sometimes this inner development stuff can just become another rat race instead of a new car, a new house. We're just going to improve ourselves. No, that's not the story. The story is we need to do this globally. The story is nobody has the answer, but all of the different organizations, and here are some of our partner organizations, they have figured some stuff out. IKEA has really figured some stuff out. And Novartis, they need to get their nurses to be able to interrupt a doctor in a very hierarchical environment and say, wait, you're giving the patient the wrong dose. Shouldn't it be this dose instead of 10 times higher? And it's really, really important for them to do that and to build trust. So all of us have different things that we have sorted out. If we start sharing and learning how we build these skills, because I'm sure that all of you have some skills that you're good at, and all of you have some skills that you could learn. And if we take the organizational perspective on this, we can really accelerate the learning. In order to do that, I do think we need one language. We need a framework to talk about, just like the SDGs, so we can share the learnings. I do think that technology, AI, the digital transformation can accelerate this, so we can actually learn from each other across the world. We can take and pick some of the best pieces. And what we're trying to do with IDGs is to create networks. I mean, we have 650 hubs and communities of practice all around the world. Different cultures have figured out different skills. We can learn some stuff from Korea and other stuff from Colombia, who's gone through 18 years of civil war, and the researchers there or the experts there. And if we don't compete in how we accelerate learning and work with human development, I think we can truly help each other grow and develop. I think we can take some of the best practices that we're using and start integrating them into our organizations. And I think we can have a lot more hope and action on the difficult, hairy, adaptive problems that we have, both within our organizations and globally. So this is what we're here for. I'm inviting you to co-create with us. There will be a moment for questions and answers. One of the surprises in the end will be around this summit. We gather 1,500 people together in Stockholm, around 10,000 people digitally, listening to different experts and working on 5 different dimensions, both in large corporations, in smaller businesses. How do you integrate that? We're working with UNFCCC, the UN organization working on climate, with AI, and with higher educations. There are different themes, and I hope you will find inspiration, and I hope you want to join and co-create in our community around the inner development goals, and hopefully become like Åsa one day, coming back and teaching the group how you have applied your learnings and what others can bring with them to really both serve the world, but also become much better at solving complex problems. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jan. And yes, give Jan a big applause. You get a lot of claps and hearts now. And of course, like, I don't know about you, but I feel that this is a part of HR's development journey, really, stepping into this important role. And now Jan is open for questions. So please go to slido.com or scan the QR code, write in your question if you already haven't, and also like the questions that are already in the Slido to prioritize the questions. Good. You'll just get a moment to do that. And then we'll take the top ones. So, Jan, there's a question. What specific IDG skills are the most important for leadership development in a more modern organization? And it will be shared. Yeah, now it's there. The question.
I think the answer is it depends, because everything is contextual. So I think it depends on what you have worked on. We also have our favorite methods and ways of starting and working. And for me, the entry point was a lot about what I was talking about. I think you will always have people who are not so interested or willing to go into leadership development or to any developmental journey. At least when we have trained people, that is always the obstacle, that some are not as highly engaged. And then for me, I think a really good start is to start with inner compass, or saying, you know what do you care about? What is most important to you? You have a list of, I don't know, 60, 50 values. There are tons of them on the internet that are free. You ask them to circle 5 to 7 values, and 2 and 2 start talking about what do they most care about, and not just from the head, but say, please share some specific experiences on why this value matters to you. Share something that you've experienced around that value. And this is a way of getting people engaged, because they talk about what they care about. And I think it's really, really important to start there, because if our motivation is more inner rather than external, everything else we do will have a higher quality. And here I think there are many learnings from the years of research on leadership development, where we can see if we can shift more towards the integrated inner motivation on whatever people do, all the skills that will be developed will be of much higher quality, much faster and easier, rather if then we push or try to externalize why. And this is also why I think we need a bigger why, a new why that motivates people more intrinsically, rather than now you're in our company, you should be doing this. And people think, yeah, but in 3 or 5 years, I'll be in another, and there'll be some other values and other leadership principles. So we need to engage, especially the new generation, but also in general, reaching other people who before did not care as much about this inner and thought, oh, that's just for people who have some kind of problems or issues. I don't need that. I'm a good manager. I've been around for 20 years without talking to somebody. I'll just do another 20 and then it's all good.
That was a great answer to a great question. Thank you. So the next question is, how do I implement this in my organization? And of course, we will get into that with Åsa for the next block, but maybe you can just start out a bit.
So the first thing is we never talk about implementing. We always talk about integrating, because it's not a thing that should go top down. And I think IKEA is the very good example of that, and how to work with that. The second part, I think it's done in very different ways depending on the size, ownership structure, and everything else in the organization. So I think the best answer is to work with the communities who have already done this. And again, I welcome you to come and join and co-create with us, those who are interested around this, and to take the best parts from IKEA, from Google, from ISDUB, that is a small organization, but really integrated this into their journey and seen great results. The CEO is writing a book about it now that's going to be released in a few. So some of the people who've been on this journey for already 1 or 2 years, they have some learnings, and to learn from those in similar situation to your own context. This is how I would recommend to do it, and then to steal with pride. Not to try to invent everything yourself, but when you hear others who have done it in a good way, just do that, and you will win years and save a lot of money on the expensive consultants. I've been one of them. So,
okay, great. So there's a next question from Emil. Why do you think the IDGs, despite their importance, are not more widely recognized or adopted?
I mean, honestly, we are a foundation that is 3 years old. We launched this with scientists at Stockholm School of Economics in collaboration with Oak Island Foundation 3 years ago, a bit more, like the framework. I wouldn't, in my wildest dreams then, thought that we would have 650 hubs around the world, huge companies coming in. I mean, each week there are 2 more. One of the big 4 auditing firms being just coming in at the highest level now, and others. The White House inviting us to do seminars with the Chief Federal Learning Officer, the Chief Federal Sustainability Officer. This will be just in a few weeks. I think it's adopted more than I could dream of. And yes, we need to still, I mean, we don't have huge marketing budgets. It's very much word of mouth, through networking and through working with usually courageous people in HR and courageous people in sustainability who want to work together. People who care about the inner, but also want to have a good benefit for the world. And I think we need to get our game together, because there are a lot of people who are lobbying for stuff that is not as good, not as optimistic or healthy, and they really come together and work hard as a network. And I think the good guys, people in human development, in sustainability, we need to level up our game and do the same.
Thank you. So I think we have time for a last question at least. Yes. Are all dimensions something you can learn, or is there something you're born with? And
I think both, like always. I think some people are born highly empathic. Others are born with a very high level of complexity awareness that can be also paralyzing, because it's harder to make decisions, and you need to learn courage. And we can develop all of these dimensions. One thing I want to say is on diversity and inclusion. There is a great meta study coming out. I really care about diversity and inclusion. I call myself a feminist. I grew up in a matriarchat, even in Ukraine. This is also why we moved to Sweden. And there is a lot of work and money going into diversity and inclusion that is not really working that well. We see that it's too slow, the systems are not changing, and there is a meta study that came out just 2 years ago showing that if you couple the structural changes and changes in external world, I mean, compensation, pressure, and so on, with training for men, especially, believe it or not, in critical thinking, empathy, and compassion. Those who have coupled their work in diversity and inclusion with those skills, especially for men, have a much larger, 4 times or so, much stronger impact in these areas. And I really think we need that. We can't wait another 100 years until we have a more diverse world. So how do we do that? How do we work with this? It's not that the inner is the answer and just going to solve everything. This is not a silver bullet. There is so many challenges that are structural that needs to be attended to. But unless we include the inner, I'm very sure we will not succeed. So the inner must be on the map. We need to work with culture and leadership. And inner does not equal individual. Please don't make that Western mistake. Inner is as collective as it can be. And the most important is working on the culture side and so on. Yes, I can share the meta study in the chat. I'll see if I can find it.
Yes. Thank you. That was perfect timing. That was everything we got from now. Fortunately, we have open mic later on, so you can ask more questions for Jan, of course. So now we have a short break until 9:49. So please be back then. Fortunately, we will continue with the best practice IKEA case on how to integrate the IDG framework. So I look forward to that. See you soon again. All right, 9:49. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you got to do what you needed to do. Now, I would like to invite you to just give it a quick energizer with me. As a former elite handball player, and I know Åsa is a yoga teacher, we know it's important to just move our body a bit. So feel free to stand up if you feel like it with me, just to shake a bit. You can look a bit silly as well. It's okay. It's good for learning. It's scientifically proven. So great. Thank you so much. Now we are ready for our next speaker, Åsa R Simonsen. Åsa is transformation manager at IKEA. She has led IKEA's leadership development program, Our Next Generation Leaders, in which IDGs were the backbone. Åsa has also led another IDG-based program named Range, Business and Culture with 300 managers. As she said, it wasn't easy, but worthwhile. She has an HR background working with learning and development and more than 20 years of leadership experience, mostly in global organizations. Åsa has a systemic and holistic approach to business and life, and she was recently a panelist on a conference on CBS named Meditation, Mind and Management. She's passionate about building organizational and transformational capabilities. With her presentation, Weaving the Web of a System that Empowers Transformation, Åsa will show you how IKEA has integrated the IDG framework in their leadership and organization. The stage is yours, Åsa. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Thank you so much for being here. I will share one case. IKEA is working with the IDGs in many different ways. We are a big, complex organization. So my perspective here is one case or a few cases of how we have done this. Yes, I'm transformation manager in the global product development company of IKEA. I've been in and out of IKEA a few times. So yes, my background is in a beautiful mix of communication, competence and learning, being a manager myself in many different roles. I will share one case, and I really look forward to also have your questions. So please pop them into Slido so we can have a conversation later. So our transformative journey then. I lead then as transformation manager a small team of catalysts, no pun intended with the cat mask, catalysts. We support transformation programs, so the bigger strategic initiatives that requires substantial shifts in behavior and ways of working and new organizational capabilities. We also step into helping businesses with creative problem solving in the more complex business challenges, the adaptive type of challenges, and also exploring new business opportunities. So basically we step in when we need to innovate the system, the organizational system and the ways of working, the structures and the culture. So we, guided by the strategy and the strategic initiatives, we aim to influence the culture, the structures that we have, and by that building transformational capabilities. And I just wanted to say with my words what Jan, you said it so well before. So this is sort of a repetition on how are the IDGs relevant in our business context as IKEA? And I want to start from that, yes, IDGs and the sustainability agenda have a strong history and connection. We can also see what Jan said, that so many of our strategic critical questions are complex. They have a high level of complexity and they require a new type of leadership. That complexity drives a need to look at a question from many diverse perspectives in completely new ways than we have done before. And that we need to think together in completely new ways, having that complexity awareness, making sense in new ways that we haven't done before, being willing to listen to opposing perspectives, not always agreeing. That means that we need to have black belt in collaboration on a different level than we have today or that we've had. So we truly need groups with high levels of psychological safety where we can innovate and collaborate in ways we have never done before. And that is not confined to the organization. That collaboration needs to be in the system. We need to collaborate with partners that we might see as competition, because we need to change industries to make the changes we need to make. We need to influence societies. So it's not about us, it's about what we need to achieve for the world. That type of collaboration requires us to understand team dynamics. How do we get the best out of a highly diverse team? How do we work with conflicts and tension? And how do we get constructive so we can have agency and create that action together that we need to see to help people stay optimistic, stay leaned in, stay tapped in when we are in the discomfort of not knowing, finding our way, testing and learning and failing again and again and again. And that the quality of that team dynamics is dependent on our personal maturity. So which Jan also said before, it's about how I show up is the outcome we get. So the more mature I am as a person, or how more aware I am, so I can manage my own emotions, I can regulate my nervous system, I can catch myself when I'm in a fear response and I'm acting in ways that are not helpful in a complex system. That's the connection for me. And I mean, Jan just went through the IDG framework, and I guess you can hear the same skill sets, just in other words. But I just wanted to give you why we see the inner development goals as relevant, not only in sustainability, but in all of our complex questions, bigger transformations. So a few words around how we are working with the inner development goals. We have been partners for a few years. We were sort of in the web of connections. A few people from IKEA got to know about this already before it became the IDGs. So in the early iterations, the early days of the work, some people from IKEA were hearing and sort of sniffing up this work. It had strong resonance. It felt like it filled a gap from the beginning in the sustainability, the competence development around sustainability. How do we make our sustainability questions accelerate? And I think why it resonated so strongly is because there's such a high alignment with the IKEA culture and values and our leadership approach. So it's sort of same, but different in a way. So it's complementing. We have not thrown out our leadership approach or, the leadership trainings that we have, but we are complementing. And this was a validation, and the research-based framework and all of the backbone of that, instead of inventing something own, to be able to lean on something that goes beyond us is highly valuable. So we use this framework to develop our transformation capabilities, the leadership that is required to make these changes. It helps us again in the collaboration and the problem solving. And we talk a lot about business and people, like leadership of business and people. And this has put, I think for me, coming also from an HR competence and learning and people and culture background, in the old world or in the existing paradigm in HR, now I might put myself out there. But I can see that there's a quite traditional view on leadership as leading myself, leading others, leading teams, and leading organizations. For me, what IDG does is it puts the value of leadership in a bigger context of making the changes, being able to make progress in these big, important questions for our company, but also for the world. So it puts it in a much bigger context. We're not practicing leadership to be better listeners with another person only. We're practicing those being skills to be better together, to find the solutions that we need together. And we have tried to contribute to the IDGs, not to the content of them, but more by showing up, doing what I'm doing now, sharing some examples of how we have used it. And we've also organized a few learning circles across the organization where we have ongoing conversations with others on what they are learning, how they're doing it. And like Jan said, we are not implementing it in the same way across IKEA. We're integrating it and we're going with energy. So I will share a case or a few cases actually in one bundle of what we have done in our company then within IKEA. So how have we used this to develop our leadership and our transformation capabilities, and moving from that traditional leadership training into a mindset and perspective or paradigm of developing transformation capabilities. So we have integrated IDGs into multiple processes. So just like Andreas said, I started off 2 years ago with the IKEA Next Generation Leaders Program. It's about 100 of our young leaders under 35. We integrated it for the first time in a leadership program for them. Last year, we took all our 300 managers through a process called the Range Business and Culture Program. We came out of a big reorganization and we had some huge business challenges that we needed to get together around. Now I'm sort of doing an adapted version of this again called Leading Transformation with 30 of our senior leaders who are not managers. We're doing also a version for IKEA Marketing and Communication Company with 45 lead managers. And then we have over 1,000 people that have been sort of engaged in spin-offs where managers on, for example, the Range Business and Culture Program took things into their organizations and integrated the IDGs in their work with their teams in many different ways. So not steered by us or HR, but with their energy. So these different processes, just a few words on how we have tried to shift from traditional leadership training to developing transformation capabilities. These different processes are designed to build capacity to influence and navigate and lead in complexity, to create agency, not being paralyzed, like Jan said before, but actually finding agency to start acting and taking action in complex questions, to inspire development of habits and skills that are helpful when leading in complexity and these adaptive challenges where we use the IDGs as the framework. Also develop strategies and habits for resilience and well-being. It's really, really tough to be in transformation. Like to go from a caterpillar to a butterfly, you need to be in that center of being a bag of goop, disintegrate. And that can feel like dying, right? So how do we help people to find strategies for resilience and well-being? And then a big thing that we wanted to do is to build the system stronger. So build the relationships, the connections, the trust, and by that growing the resilience of our organization. So these programs are not traditional leadership trainings. They're not focused on leadership theory. They're not expert to student teaching. It's not passive listening to high-paced presentations of stuff. And it's not an individual experience. So what they are personal and collective transformation journeys. We want this to be a space where people transform the way they lead, to really deeply shift where they come from. We do it with the business reality as the context and in the forefront, so it's not separated as a leadership training over here. It's a space to build its community and the connections, and a space to slow down. I think you recognize the pace of the day-to-day in your organizations where leaders are like, I have half an hour, and they're sort of up to here. But to really invest the time to slow down. So we have designed them, of course, around business content. We have designed them with the backbone of sequencing, where we use something called Theory U. I won't go into that in depth, but that's a transformational map from MIT. And then we've used the IDGs as the skills and the practices. So instead of talking leadership theory, we focus on practicing these skills. That's what we do when we meet in the room, and we do them in context of our business. So if you look at this, we're going through a journey with these people where we use the IDGs, and for each session, we have a bit of a deeper dive. So for the first session, we have spent more time to practice the being skills. So that was around presence, that compass, the personal values, my capacity to be self-aware. Second session, we have practiced more complexity awareness, different types of tools for thinking differently, making sense in different ways than we are trained to do. Third session has been a lot around the relationship, and in Otto Scharmer's model, this is called going to source. So what we have done is to go deep with people, to really look at our company culture and values, and going to source, going to root. Like, what do we bring with us? How can we build from our heritage? And who do we want to be next? What's the culture we need to create now? And also on the same level, talk about me as a leader. And then towards the end, going up the U, you can see this as an energy curve in a way, to really stepping into that optimism and the agency and the collaboration on prototyping and finding the ways to go forward. So a few examples then. I loved, Jan, your thinking doing gap. So that's what we are trying to bridge, to go from the traditional training of learning and thinking about theory into doing leadership, practicing new skills, trying them out. So how we have done this is we have used the IDGs as concrete learning outcomes when we have designed the programs. So if we say self-awareness as a skill, yeah, but what is the learning outcome? What do we want them to be able to do, for example? So that's one thing. Of course, then, if we have decided to focus on, we haven't practiced all 23 skills in everything. Of course, we have circled, like someone asked, like which are most important, and Jan said it's contextual. So we have, of course, narrowed down on a few of the skills and chosen to focus on them. But that have guided our choice of exercises and practices to bring into those experiences. And then we have practiced them in the sessions and applied them on relevant business context. And then we have asked them in between the sessions to go home and try it out, to make experiments. So maybe if I'm a leader who my pattern is I have team meetings, but we only talk business. So then we might ask that person, okay, so what if you would start each team meeting with a check-in, where you get people together, ask how they are, and start bringing that relation aspect into your group, bringing another level of presence, another level of listening into the group, and just explore what happens when I do that. So testing and trying and nudging small things, it might be a big thing for someone. And then we also have had in most of these processes learning circles or peer groups across organization with the main purpose of them reflecting and integrating together. Okay, you tried that, Andreas. How was that for you? What did you learn? Or Jan, maybe he shows up like, oh, shit, I tried to check in and it was a disaster. It went on for an hour and everyone was complaining. What should I do? It didn't work. So to help each other keep going and practicing. And then we've also, as part of this process, integrated the IDG skills as a framework for asking for feedback in connection to their development talks. So we integrated it into the HR processes and saying, okay, when you ask for feedback, ask people around these skills. Where do you see my strengths? Where do you see my growth edge? And then bringing that into the development talks and the personal development plans. So these are a few very sort of more concrete examples. And for us, some of the value of integrating the IDGs is to shift our perspective from the more traditional HR learning and development mindset into this work is about cultivating the soil. It's influencing the preconditions for behaviors to show up. It's not training people in active listening and then we can tick off, yes, we have trained 100 people and they are now better listeners. It's coming from a different place. We know these skills are important to generate the future. We can't tick that box. It's an infinite game. We will never be done. It's that cultivating of the soil. Another value is that it's external, it's research-based, and it connects us to a well of resources, validation, and a bigger context. It has relevance to all of our complex and transformational challenges, also beyond sustainability, but of course also in sustainability. It has helped us, or the leaders, to make progress in critical and complex topics where they were stuck. And we see that from reflection that we have gathered from them on impact. For me, again, Jan, you said this, that it's a human-centric approach. In a world that becomes more AI, tech, let's get more human. Let's develop the skills that makes us, I'm on team human, right? Let's be even more human. Let's be even more present. Let's be even more collaborative. Let's be even more creative together. And it's helping us over time to build more resilience as an organization. So I think why you should get involved as HR. I've stepped out of the HR professional box for now, being in the business transformation arena. But for me, you are the ones who you can take lead. It's an opportunity to bring human development on the agenda from another perspective than the traditional learning and development, to step into it from a business perspective. So for me, it's a bigger and more business-focused context for why to invest in leadership development. Not only to be that better manager, but to make the critical changes happen together. Andreas, can I have 1 minute more before we switch to questions?
Sure, you actually have 2.
Lovely.
Yes.
Then I want to, one thing that the IDGs and also the summit experience have inspired with us is to see how art, poetry, and these types of modalities can bring different perspectives. So I want to read you a poem. I hope that's okay. So it's for me, it speaks to the value of the IDGs and the type of work we're doing.
We don't see it right now, Åsa.
Sorry?
I don't see it on my screen.
No, I will read it out. So
okay,
you don't
sure,
see it.
sorry.
Yeah. So maybe just lean back a bit, soften your listening. So you don't need to listen from the head. So see if you can listen from your being. Listen from your heart. At times, this phase may feel a little slower, but it's still active groundwork. Use this time to weave the insights you've gained. Let them enrich the soil beneath you. Let the process of cultivating be dynamic and transformative. Trust, even when it seems like nothing is happening, the time you take to cultivate is not in vain. Cultivation involves an engaged effort where the application of your knowledge has profound effects on the outcome. Creating space to cultivate is more than just staying busy, but an investment in the process. It's a way to ensure that when it's time to transition into the next phase of action, you're prepared to nurture those efforts in the best way you can. Through cultivation, keep making space to apply what you have been learning in this life. It matters more than you know. You matter more than you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Åsa. I think we could all of us feel that, and you got a lot of heart from it as well. Thank you for sharing of yourself and IKEA's story. Now it's time for questions. So in a second, Laura will share the Slido questions. Please prioritize the questions by liking the ones you want to hear answered. Okay. I'll just look at my phone first, and then it will be shared on the screen soon, I'm sure. Okay, let's see. Åsa, the first question is, how have you combined working with the IDGs and SDGs?
Me, myself, have not. But I know that I have many colleagues working in the sustainability arena, and they were the early adopters of this. So they were part of the sniffing up that this was out there. And so I know that they are integrating it into competence development initiatives within the sustainability arena for people who lead sustainability questions, for example. So that's how far I know.
Sure. It's fine. Thank you. And I can see we have a bit of technical issues, so I'm sure it will come back in a moment. Now I'll share from here.
Yep.
How do you determine which skills are most relevant for your organization? And that's Emil's question.
That's a great question. So for each of these different programs, there has been different weights. So it's been sort of, we discussed both with, like, depending on the purpose of the different programs, which were the participants, what did we want to achieve with what was sort of the intention with the program. It's been slightly different. So we've sort of both asked the participant, we've made them, they have done some like self-assessment on what they think would be most relevant skills for them to develop. But we have also made some judgment calls on what we would prioritize based on what would help us move towards the intention of this specific program. And then we have stayed adaptive. So over these programs are not ready-baked pies. They're highly adaptive. So we have also adapted along the way. And one thing that I can say has been working really well is to stay with a few practices and like go back to them. So I know many organizations sort of have a challenge around creating a feedback culture. So for example, how can you, if you choose that as one of the practices to do, how can you weave it in again and again and again in different ways rather than taking on too much or too many different practices?
Thank you. That was a good question. Also, the answer for sure. The next question is about the program Leading Transformation, and how have you integrated IDG in this, and who was it actually for the target group?
So we did the program with 300 managers last year in our company, but we also have highly influential leaders who are not managers. So this program is for them. So they don't have people reporting to them, but they lead big strategic questions, they lead big development initiatives. Some people on my team who lead transformational work are there. So that's the target group. So it's not the top management 30, it's our senior leaders that are not managers. And we integrate the IDGs in the same way as in the other programs. We use that framework to see which skills do we want to practice in this group. How can we bring that in rather than talking too much theory? We go sort of straight into the doing and choosing a few skills to focus on. Can you maybe shortly describe which skills did you choose, or just one or two? If we have chosen, like, so for example, in the being part, we will work a lot with the compass and the capacity to be present. In the thinking skills, we focus on complexity awareness and our capabilities to make sense of things that are complex, to sort of also come to some kind of conclusion, being able to make brave decisions in complex questions. In the relational space, we focus on that empathy and compassion and the connection with people who have opposing views or different perspectives. And then in the collaboration and acting, it's a lot about the optimism, the courage, and the resilience to stay with it, and the techniques and methods to work with experimentation. So to test and try our way forward rather than doing big project management plans. Sure. The next question is, have you worked with the C-suite at IKEA about IDG, and what was the reaction and outcome? That's a good question. We don't have the language of C-suite at IKEA, but we have, like, you can say we have a group management, and then we have 3 business units, main business units, and each of them, of course, have a management team. To my knowledge, we haven't done active work with the group management, but range management, which is the management team where I sit, they were like initiating the whole program, this range business and culture program. So they were also part of that group of 300. And I worked, of course, super close with them in that work. Our supply organization, Susanne Vaidsunas, is our global supply manager, and she also sits in group management, of course. She is a big advocate for IDGs. She's been to the summit. I'm not sure if she was on the stage first year, maybe not, but she was there. They have just done work with her management team, which is inspired by the IDGs. So yes, it's present. And there is support, strong support for this.
Thank you. And maybe a bit related to that, the last question and answer, are you working with this in the corporate part of the organization? And that was what you were speaking to about the range and group, and also with your colleagues in the stores, like the front line?
Here is the complexity of IKEA. So the retail part of IKEA, IKEA is actually a franchise organization, which not so many people know. So the retail part is separated from the corporate part, us who work with product development and the concept and supply. So my circle of influence is not the stores, but I happen to know that Jesper Brodin, who is the CEO of our retail organization, has now had an awakening around the inner development goals. So let's see what the future holds. There's this glorious future is one of the cultural statements from our founder Ingvar.
Perfect. Thank you. It'll be interesting to follow, and we can do a follow-up on that as well, for sure. So now we are curious on you. Everyone, thank you to Åsa, and thank you for the great questions. Now we have a side question for you that Laura will share. Yes. What are the best ways for HR to drive sustainable development? Now you might have gotten inspired by today's speakers. Do small activities and learn quickly. Practice. It was your mantra, Åsa. Work with the transformation skills. Weave IDG into existing trainings, focusing more on people development than business development, I think it says. Just keep it going, and in a minute we'll let today's speakers reflect on your answers, and we can bring that into the open mic session afterwards. Leave the classic way of thinking about learning and leadership development behind. Integration versus implementation, bottom up, not top down changes. Okay, so Jan and Åsa, who wants to go first? Any reflections on the best ways for HR to drive sustainable? Now it's echoing. Do you hear that echoing? Okay, so that was the Teams teasing us earlier today.
Is there echo from my side as well? Because last we didn't have that? No. Okay, so that's on your side. Then I can reflect if there is no echo.
Yes, please do.
Thank you, Åsa, for a very lovely session, and I'm so impressed. I have to say, when we started this, and yes, IKEA was in this even before the framework was launched, which is incredible, just showing the level of engagement that there is. But I'm very impressed by the process, how many times in organizations it doesn't have to be top down from the highest HR director or CEO. There are so many times I've seen this in most of our partners. Actually, there are a few brave managers who say, wait, this is a great sense-making tool. This is a great communication tool to explain why the inner work matters in order for us to be better with some of the bigger challenges that we face as an organization. And as Åsa says, it doesn't even have to be in sustainability. It can, of course, be this is where it's made, but and how that works its magic, how people find each other across departments and start testing things out. And sooner or later, it usually reaches top management. But in most of the cases in companies working with IDGs, it haven't started with top management. It had started somewhere, a small experiment. Sometimes it's been even the local countries like Egon Zander. Egon Zander came in through Japan. There were some brave people in Japan saying, let's start doing this, let's experiment. And they say, and then later we'll bring the Americans in, if ever, because it's such a process many times. But and that type of spirit, I think many people who are driven by inner motivation also can feel sometimes alone, maybe less in some organizations, more in others, and finding that place where you can really share practices, where you can share sense making also around some of the larger issues and how to tackle them, I think is really, really important for us to reload, to feel that we are agents, but we are not lonely agents. There are millions of people caring for this issue, and also getting more and more on board internally in the company. That usually happens within just a few years.
Thank you, Jan. Oh, and Jan, can you just mute yourself? Then I think the echo disappears.
Yes.
Åsa? Would you like to build on Jan's take or state something different?
Let's see if I have an echo. Do you have an echo?
No.
I do.
No.
Yes, you do.
So should I go anyway, or I can also write in the chat if it's annoying? Now it seems to work.
It's gone.
Okay.
You can go.
Okay. Yeah, so I agree with Jan. We had Susanne Weidsoon as our supply manager. Like I said, she was one of those leaders, brave leaders, high up in the hierarchy in a way, who supported this really early, and that's had a big impact. Having said that, it's the integration and not the implementation that has creates empowerment for us. I think looking at the flow of stuff also that shows up here, I think to be curious as an HR function or an HR community in your company, your system, to see like the IDG skills and the IDG framework, what does that look like for us? Like how in our system, what makes sense to go about this? And then I think to be curious around how would we, if we would role model these behaviors in the way we start integrating the IDGs, what does that look like? It looks like more like, for me, that part of this is the experimentation and starting small and doing more of what's working rather than making a huge plan and start like pushing it out, rather go with pull. And I saw someone say that like the partnership with the business leaders, find the others. Find the others, find those who are willing, where it resonates, and start working with them and see where it goes. See what wants to emerge. What is the right way, for most valuable way, rather, maybe for you. It's probably very different from what we are doing. I hope, in a way, because I want to learn from you how you are doing it and what you are learning.
Perfect. Jan, do you have a last reflection before going to the open mic?
Yeah, I think when meeting HR communities, I do think we have a possibility in this rapidly changing times where we historically have been able to recruit our way out of lacking competence because that it has been the digital wave or something else, and we have been able to go out and find the people who have been able to bring in some of this stuff. And sometimes HR becomes reactive or administrative in that sense. And for me, when I speak to the global experts in sustainability, it's very clear that the chief sustainability officers, they're chanceless, clueless without HR. There's nothing these people will be able to do. I'm meeting some of the largest companies through the World Business Council, the 220 biggest companies, including Apple, Amazon, and so are meeting their CEOs now in New York, just in a week at New York Climate Week, and I'm meeting with their chief sustainability officers. And it's very clear that unless we hook arm with HR and HR becomes really strategic, we can't recruit our way out of this. We need to work with the leaders we have and help them adapt to the complexity that they're facing and help build skills at large. And it's not rocket science, it's adaptive work. But there are good experts, there are good methods that we can use and integrate. We can learn from each other. In the community, there are companies who have already figured out. I mean, if Åsa has done some good training on sense making, awesome. Please tell us, how did you work with sense making and complexity? There are others who have done great work on trust and how do you build trust more quickly in teams and so on. So if we can release the patent and start sharing how we upskill our people in the fastest and most effective ways, if we as HR create a better case why this is not some kind of need to have, but this is a must have for us to stay on top of the game, for us to both meet the global challenges, but also stay in business. Both HR and sustainability can become much higher up on the agenda. And this is the type of narrative shift that I think the IDGs can bring. And a lot of top managers who burn for these issues, they see that we need a narrative shift. We need to reprioritize how we think about human development and sustainability as an adaptive challenge, where it takes us and our capabilities to transform, to become stronger, healthier. And through that, I think we get both more hope and more action on the global challenges. And this is really needed. So this is my invitation to you.
I think that invitation. Oh, yeah, thank you. I think that invitation is a perfect segue. Yeah, thank you. Give big applause to both of them. And I think it's a perfect segue for an open mic session. So anyone who wants to ask a question directly for Åsa and Jan, now it's the time. You're also welcome to write in the chat if you're more comfortable with that. You will get the Slido results afterwards in the follow-up mail. So who will be the brave first one to break the ice? I can be that in case. Okay, Ulrik, our CEO of Nokia, he wants to go.
I think also other people joined. Okay, yeah, well, very brief. I think in Denmark we have a lot of discussions at the moment coming back for COVID-19, working with people being engaged in organizations, that some of the top managers, the CEOs of organizations are in the press right now stating like, well, working from home, all this flexibility, they see is like at absence from work. And of course, when you have discussions internally in big organization, Jan and also there is some, I guess, to change. There's also a reaction. So what is the common things they react upon when you introduce your ways of thinking?
I mean, from my end, if I start, I think from the HR, sometimes the first reaction is not another framework, because there are enough frameworks and it's to be pushed and controlled and somehow something else to relate to. I think the more important part is to understand that this is a way of shifting the story and narrative and getting people to, first of all, care, and secondly, understand and make the world manageable. Because a lot of people looking into doing inner work or working with leadership development, there's so many different theories, there's so much language that it makes your head spin. And what the SDGs did, that with the 17 goals, they said, yes, there's a lot of issues out there in the world, but we've kind of simplified it and put it into 17 colorful boxes. And all of us kind of intuitively gets it. And I think this is the purpose of the IDGs. It's an open source framework. Anybody can use it. You don't need to become a member or partner organization of the IDGs to do it. But it gives a sense making, okay, now we're going to work on our thinking skills and we're going to do some exercises around it. I don't know the exercises, but at least I understand where the facilitator is trying to take me and why. And this gives a sense of agency, and I feel that things are manageable. So there is an overwhelm of different frameworks, different theories. So that is usually the fear, but it can also be the actual strength here when you say yes. And this is why we need a meta framework, so other frameworks can be under that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Åsa, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I get the same, Jan, like you say, oh, not another framework. We have our own, we have our culture and values, we have our leadership approach. So why this? But then I think if these senior leaders are also people, like they are human beings, and many of them, when in conversations, I find out that they struggle, they're in pain, they're trying to cope with a reality where they feel maybe overwhelmed or they don't know what to do, and like most of us, they have their confidence in the old way of like being competent and being the expert and knowing what to do and having the answers. So yeah, to have that conversation, say, could it be helpful? Could we try a new thing then? So I think it's to have compassion with where they are at and the huge weight that's on their shoulders, and to not go about it from I have all the answers, I know what we need to do now, but come at it from with the IDGs as how you go about it yourself when you approach them and we have conversations. It's really helpful, not always easy. And then I think also in our culture, we're a very action-oriented culture. It's a very pragmatic, skills-based. You don't, like you said, Jan, you don't need to know the underlying theory of systems thinking or complexity theory to try an exercise to think about a challenging topic in a new way. And when you do that, you will recognize, oh, this is really valuable. I see things now. We've found a way forward. We managed to take a scary decision in a complex matter where we have been paralyzed. So you can help them make mini steps and see that this is actually, it's valuable to do things and try things out in a different way. I'm rambling.
Thank you so much. No, thanks.
But that was my 5 cents.
That was great. Thank you so much. Anna, you have a question. I see it in the chat, but you can also raise it directly.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for a lovely presentation to both of you. How can HR play a role in cultivating an environment that this transformation actually will flourish and we can help people with those skills?
I mean, again, from my end, we need a larger story. We have been stuck in 2 stories where, I mean, HR, first of all, it's very difficult to be HR because you have to be experts in, like IT systems and in laws, and then you need to be experts in human development. You need to know more than any psychologist or researchers know because you need to bring in the experts who are going to develop your people. it's an impossible role in some sense. But I think what we can do and step up to as HR professionals is much more telling why it matters. And why it matters that is larger than just why it matters for the individual, because you're going to feel good, you're not going to be burned out, you're not going to be stressed, or why it matters for the organization. This is what Åsa also said. It puts it in a larger context. And through that larger story, larger narrative, I think HR issues can be higher up on the agenda. And I do think that the HR community need to start speaking with the same language in general, why human issues matter. And it's not only for the companies to stay sustainable, but also for us to solve the global issues. Yeah, Åsa.
Yeah, a last reflection.
Yeah, I'm also, what would it look like to cultivate that environment in your team? So if you would lead by example and start, instead of trying to change out there, change them, what if you would start in the HR, in your team, in your HR team, in your circle of control and influence, and lead by example? So you start showing up differently. And how would that have an impact and ripple effect around you? So that could be an interesting experiment to do. If you would start using the IDG framework in your team, what does that look like? And in how you lead the HR questions. Of course, I know there are lots of aspects of HR that is more technical, where you need like protocols and rules and regulations, but there are also questions that are not. So that could be interesting.
Yes. Thank you, Anna, for your great question and also for the answers, of course. Time is flying in good company. And now this is actually the time for us to wrap up in some sense. So everyone give a big applause to both of our excellent speakers today. Compassionate and passionate. That's something that we can feel for sure. Okay, so I just want to share quickly some of the key takeaways that I've gotten from you. Jan, you said like it's an adaptive challenge, which means it's a leadership challenge, and the workplace is the best arena for development. That's something to take with us as well. And of course, we need to get a sauna if we want to attract clever people. But also, you said how we show up determines our outcome, and I think that was beautifully put. And HR can cultivate the soil, creating the right conditions, and that was what you were speaking to as well, asking about, Anna. So everyone, now Laura will share the satisfaction survey, and we hope that you, of course, will share your experience from this webinar. We also always want to be better, and you know it's difficult to get answers on that in a follow-up mail. So please just type in, it's short, and if you have any suggestions for cases or how we can do anything different, then let us know. Let's see if it works. I can't see it on my screen now. You can maybe see it on your phone. Like if you go to Nokia 2024 and it should be there now. Yes, I can see it on my phone. And yeah, Åsa, one asked who was the author of the poem. So if you can write that in chat, that would be great as well. Thank you. It's a beautiful poem. So I'll just give you a moment to answer the questions. And then in the beginning, I did say that we have a little present for you, a little gift. And I will reveal that in a minute. This will be a bit of a cliffhanger. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And we will keep the poll active afterwards as well, so you can go there to vote. So with 10 minutes left, I want to share that we have an offer for you. Like Jan, he mentioned the IDG Summit 2024. And we can actually offer you a discount on both the physical ticket and also the digital ticket. So we'll share that in the follow-up mail. But with 10 minutes left of this formal time, we also want to give you the gift of being able to either, you have two options, that's the invitation. You can either now just sit and use your free time to just reflect on the learnings from the webinar and integrate it, as we just spoke about. You can also, the option 2, look into the IDG material that will be shared in the chat now. And that's both about the summit and IDG in general, but also a video of the IDG film, actually. So feel free to use the time in whatever you want, and we have offered you two options now, with a discount as well. So everyone, just enjoy the rest of the time. Give a big applause again to today's speakers, and we'll see you next time. We will hang out here for a bit.